Call the meeting to order.
Just give the date, time, and who's present.
Tuesday, September 25th, 2012. And call roll.
Vicki Yates.
Here.
Cindy Toll.
Here.
Derek Metzen.
Here.
And Christina Robertson Gardner, staff.
All right. Let's look at your Tinker House update.
Yep. All right. So this was the packet that was provided to the City Commission at their work session that week on the 11th of September. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of update on the process that's happened this summer with Maya Foti and let me get this off.
I have a notification that the document could not
Just
be printed.
press OK.
I did. Nothing happened. Oh, there we go. Oops.
Let's take a look. Oh, no, but you want to get back to your packet. Oh, how'd you get?
I never had the
Should
packet.
be on there. Can you find yourself?
I can't find myself. Should be alphabetical, right? There I
This
am.
was quite a packet.
Yeah, it was. I had Rick look at it because the drawings were so awesome.
Yeah, they were.
I
Okay.
love stuff like that.
There. You got the document. All right, so we should be.
There we go.
So to give you a little recap, in January of this year, the city sent out, December sent out an RFP for an architectural firm to do architectural engineering drawings for their Matinga house. Maya Foti with ARG was chosen, and she spent the spring putting together the packet, made a preliminary presentation to the city commission in June, maybe early June, and let them know that she had some additional information. And what the crux of the additional information was in understanding where the structural deficiencies came from was a better understanding of the staircase. And at some point, either when it was down on 6th Street or sometime right after the move to a second location, the staircase went from an enclosed staircase to the open staircase you see, and it was flipped. And that flipping did basically remove some of internal structural supports. And so they had really two options to go down to looking at the solution. They could keep the stairs as it is today and find a structural solution for the stairs and beef up the area that needed structural support. But what they opted to do, and with the direction of the City Commission this summer, they spent more information on trying to figure out where the original staircase was, what was its configuration, and could building it back to where it was basically solve both problems, help use the new stair construction as the structural support as well, and bring it back to what it originally was structural-wise. And so that's kind of what they did this summer, is working with Bill Hawkins, Maya Foti. They did some pretty detailed structural investigation. She's amazing. She gets right into the weeds, and she was poking through to find the members and trying to figure out where those big support posts were connecting between the hallways and where they were not. And so through the report, you can kind of see these pictures where you kind of see these close-ups, but she's trying to match that up, and where something was cut up, then she's trying to build that story back. And so what you see from this report is kind of that final plan, basically the 90% drawings, where we are looking at the proposed location of the enclosed stair and the proposed location of the ADA access, which is coming in from John Adams on the side porch you see from John Adams. So it'll be a direct ADA sidewalk that kind of comes up through there, and that's going to be how you're going to get in through the ADA access into the building. We worked really hard. She worked really hard with the National Park Service, both the regulatory aspect, but also if ever one day this became a Park Service property, they have a universal access requirement where, for the most part, they really want to see the ADA access in the front of the building. That's a big issue. She was able to kind of talk them into this alternate because of the size of the house being so small that putting an ADA access in the front would really potentially affect the one big significance of the house is the small federal front porch. So the National Park Service kind of said that this, because of the scale of the building, that this ADA access coming off from John Adams to the rear porch was acceptable. The second issue that the City Commission gave them more direction to study this summer was the addition. There was some question in the initial rounds of investigation on what the age of that addition was. If you remember from the original report, they saw kind of different additions over time on the rear of the Ermitinger, and kind of, was it one of those where the ground, like those ground floor walls were part of them original, and then over time they changed and added to, but you could kind of go back to an original wall. And the question, if you could do that, would you want to bring it back to that
Well, even
proportion?
the drawings, when it was down by the mill, there was drawings with a flat roof and there was drawings with a
Well, that's the
peak
front of the
roof.
building. This is the rear addition. So it had a smaller addition, then it had a bigger addition, and then it had a taller addition.
Yeah, I
So
just
kind of had
think the
these
whole
three
house
different
was
ones. So there was a philosophical question of, if we want to bring this house as much as we can back to 1844 in the Ermitinger era, what do we do with the addition? And there was, basically the summer was spent looking at different options, and basically what was determined was we can't definitively say much about the additions. It doesn't look like it, because they have two different not foundation, they have two different structural members, so it's not like you have one beam that's going all the way through. So the end of the day, what the ARG is proposing is pretty much to keep it as is and utilize the back area for the ADA bathroom that they need to do, and any kind of back of the house work. And then really concentrate on the main volume to be the 1844 Ermitinger area. The other thing that I want to make sure I mention is, as part of this project, is to do a full basement. And that's where all the HVAC and additional storage, no habitable area will be down there. But when it's done, it won't be any higher than it is now. And so, but you may see, they're still working on, potentially you might see an exterior egress stairs that go down to a basement exit, but maybe not. It might be all internal. So
Are
they're
they going
still
to have
working
to
on
move the
that.
house to do that?
I'll have to jack it up to do it.
Just hot, just lift it.
But what that's going to do is going to resolve, there's some hydrostatic pressure. We have the issues with the potential fill when they had the basement of that big Craftsman house that was the police station admin building that was demolished. The Ermitinger house is kind of halfway on where the basement would have been, and there's a question about the fill that was placed in that. So there's kind of all these different issues, and then, of course, as you know, Oregon City's water table is pushing up. So what they think is a full basement, full height foundation. We'll get all the HVACs out from right now. It's basically on grade in a crawl space. Provide extra storage for any future use. So the historic building does not have to be used for storage. And so that's kind of what I see as the parts of the plan. Right now, we're going to be working on the kind of final drawings this fall. Our plan, we have about 2/3 of the funding we need. It's about $600,000 in between the grants and the City Commission.
That's pretty good.
We're going to be working on that last third. We're having some conversations with Mara Memorial Trust, and looking at some of the more non-preservation oriented.
So you mean
feelers.
you have 400 of the 600, or the 600 is
You have
2/3?
about high 3 of the 600.
Okay.
But the one thing that we're going to be working on is the Community Development Block Grant, which we received from Clackamas County, which is fantastic. Has some strings attached related to their management of the project as it moves forward this next spring. They're in control of the project because Community Development Block Grant, the day-to-day management of the project. So we're working really hard this fall and winter to get all the historic preservation notation, prequals, all of that embedded into these construction documents. So all of that, though the correct firm is chosen and the correct kind of management can be done and the correct people are chosen. So that's probably our, along with the extra grant funding, it's going to be really dialing in on all those little issues about how do we best ensure the success, knowing that we won't be doing the day-to-day management of the construction. So Maya's helping us to try to put as much of that pre-qualification and specs embedded into the document, so we make sure we get the right firms. So that's pretty much the update I have right now, and that's what she gave the City Commission. So I wanted to get you looped in on that.
So what's the timeline?
Our goal is to start next spring, summer. So we're working out, kind of backing up from then when the RFPs will come out. But we're realizing it's most not likely not a phase project. You know, we may be able to do some of the interior finishing in a phase 2, but for the most part, it's core and shell is all one thing.
And the shell is sound for the winter?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we're fine for
Okay.
the winter. Yeah, that's structurally fine for the winter.
Okay.
So are you looking to put it out to bid or start construction next summer?
Summer, yeah. So the question is, late spring, early summer?
Okay.
We're working on the back details on that. I think knowing that we have this part of the requirements, because it's a community development block grant for Clackamas County to be the prime on it, that's different. And it being a historic preservation project, we need to do more due diligence on how best to set us up for success on that. But it's hard to say no to $125,000. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have an idea who you're going to request proposals from, or are we going to have to come up with that?
No, the key is you when you do your bid, you have your prequals, you have all your requirements, so you make sure that only qualified firms bid, and then you pick the best bid of those qualified firms. So where you fail, or where you not fail, but where you don't want to be, is where we have firms that kind of qualify or say they qualify, but we know they don't qualify, or there's a question of their qualification, and are they really the best firm? Maybe they worked one time on this one historic project. We have to write the quals to the point where we are really separating firms that do historic preservation work and firms that do not. And so
Are
that's
we going
the
to
key.
take guidelines from the people that are doing the analysis?
Yeah, so there's two parts. There's the qualification of the firms in your background, and then there's the specs that are embedded in the document. And so it's kind of two parts. And that's what we're going to be working on this next year.
Okay. How about the BC 12023 Preservation Grant Program update?
So we usually, every fall, I try to bring this on as an agenda item and just highlight the Preservation Grant Program, announce that we, again, this year have $5,000. So formally asking that we move forward with 5 $1,000 grants, like we did last year. It has to start September for people who have not applied for a grant before, and then wait till January for people who have applied for. And so I'm just kind of getting the formal direction from the Historic Review Board that that's what you want to do again this year. And then I'll move forward. I haven't amended the website yet, so I'm about to do that. But before I did that, I wanted to see if there's any other direction you want to move forward this year or future years. Or
I think that's good. It's worked in previous years.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
okay. So I will, sometime this next week, you'll see the new 2012-2013 application and the new date submittal and all that page updated.
Okay.
The same information, but with new dates for this year.
Okay, I was going to say there was a typo on page 2. If
Oh,
it wasn't.
sure.
Yeah.
Why don't you give it to me after
Okay.
the meeting, because I don't have everything set up. There was one question, actually, and it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but we did put out for that second category of non-window work, porch repair, siding repair, and we also had foundation as an option, and I think it was understood as not kind of normal house foundation repair, but maybe we could use this grant money for extraordinary measures or to help a house that just had pretty serious foundation issues and didn't know where to go and
Was it tied into porch repair?
no, I think we always had it out there because Oregon City has so many homes without foundation or half foundations or funky foundations, and over the years a lot of people come in about that issue and knowing the expense. I think we always kept it in there, and I just wanted, it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but it's always been a question where people come to me and I remember the conversation we had, but I don't know how you view foundation, when you would see would be a good candidate, or what kind of foundation application you would say, no, that's not really where we want to spend our money, or any historic home that has a foundation issue, great, let's give money to a historic home because they're putting money into their foundation, and that's fine too. So I just didn't want to get the feeling of the board on that issue, because I think all the other ones I understand, but we had that out, and it's never really been formalized on what we really mean and what we'll pay for in foundation repair. Or if we see it different, because we've said before, painting, roof repair, gutters, those are things that every house does, and so that's something you just do as a house owner. We don't want to spend our $1,000 grants on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if foundation repair came under that, or if it was extraordinary measures, or how you wanted to treat foundation repair, if it was just part of a larger project, or if it had to be failing, or...
I think that's a good question. Not that we're making a decision tonight, but if it is integral to the design of the house, such as a stone foundation, or something that was ornate, that would make sense to me, but a typical concrete foundation that was poured well after the house was built, I think that would be on the owner.
What
Yeah.
about a house that actually never had a foundation and kind of has had some type of stone or this or that, and they want to...
It's part of the renovation.
Yeah, there's something to that too, and it's like, what exactly are you doing, and are you making it worse than...
Well,
Yeah.
the thing about it is, the houses that get renovated and a foundation that gets put in are more likely to get sold and bought by people who want to live there and realize that they don't have to do as much work as they got
and
them.
Derek, when you do a new foundation, you probably are doing your tie downs at the same time, so you're doing your structural upgrades.
Absolutely.
For
Yeah.
the most part. So there's something with that. But so I just didn't know, and never had a good answer to give them. We all know the obvious one where someone comes in and we're the last ditch effort and the house is in horrible condition and we can help and we can be that last bit that saves the day. And
Yeah.
Are we
but
talking
other
$1,000?
yeah, other than that,
We're-
the other ones that are kind of in the gray area.
Yeah, we're talking about throwing in $1,000 into a $25,000
Yeah.
project. So it's
Yeah.
really kind of a small
Yeah.
drop in the bucket. If
Yeah.
someone's going to do it,
For a foundation.
we aren't going to be at the tipping point.
Right.
They run more than 25, don't they?
We've got to lift up an entire house.
Well, that's a full
Just like
foundation. So
utilities.
are there partial foundation repairs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for instance, my house, my kitchen is now on an L-shaped porch, and there's not a poured foundation underneath that. It's pillars, and it's actually resting on some bedrock.
Yeah. We have that in Orrington.
But, it doesn't bother us,
Yeah.
and we got financing, so...
Yeah. Pier foundations are a lot more common in drier locations like Texas than they are here. But I guess we could look at it just as a general point of view. Maybe let any applicants know that we may be skeptical about it,
They can
but they could try.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I've said. There may be one coming up. That's the reason why I am asking. I just want to get better direction on this one.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know.
Is the one that may be coming up just a regular concrete
I don't know. I have
foundation?
no idea
Oh.
about the merits of it. They just asked, and I went, I don't know quite. We had it in there as a, it could
Well,
be
they know
potentially
how
used
much
for.
money that were, if they were to get it, how much it would be, right? The people that.
Yeah, they know it's $1,000.
Yeah.
So if they think that would help them, I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of a
General.
porch foundation, for
Yeah.
instance, or a kitchen addition. But if we're talking about
Whole house.
whole house,
Whole house, it's not even going to make, $1,000 isn't going to make a difference.
Okay.
You said you would be in favor, or you wouldn't be in favor?
I
of a
wouldn't be in
porch?
favor of doing a porch.
Oh no, I don't think we should.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
not in favor
I mean,
of
that's
doing
simple
any
and
of it.
inexpensive.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Or you know, another example is one year no one comes forward. We have $3,000 left in the spring, and someone comes in with. I mean, you know, there's other potentials. I just wanted to get a feeling of kind of where the board found it. It's kind of, I think it's same as me, is what are you doing in your porch repair that's integral to you being a historic house and not just being
Right.
a homeowner of an older house.
Exactly.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Next item.
All right, PC 12024 Historic Review Board Work Program.
Yeah, I wanted to review this fall and kind of check off some of the items and then talk a little bit about future, and we can bring this up next month as well when we have our other two board members. But just to give you an update, let me go back to it. Some of these we've already done, and I'm going to remove next month. So I wanted to let, sounds like we are in favor of the photo contest being a yearly event, so I'll just kind of keep that on. And hold on, I'm having. The downtown nomination, I'm still working. Nothing's been updated from last time we talked. Priority 2 will be moving forward with an RFP for at least the city properties this fall, winter, when we have time. We're a little understaffed right now in planning. So that's moving forward this year. The D list, the landmarks, number 3, that Diana Painter had identified as part of our survey, is not being moved forward because of staff time. So I wanted to let you know that. And you can let me know how you see that priority and where you see it relates to the other goals. Then we revised the guidelines for alterations and additions, so that was done last month, so that will be removed. The city website has not been revised because of staff resources. We had 7 local preservation grant, Metro Enhancement Grant. From what I've received from the Metro Enhancement Committee about our program, it's consistently not been funded, so my recommendation is we don't go back. It just hasn't been funded the last 2-3 years, and it's always been kind of middle of the pack. So, I mean, I can apply again, but I just want to let you know that if I have staff resources, I can apply, but it's definitely seen by the committee as not ranking high enough based on the number of funds that are requested each year and the amount of funds they have.
Sure.
Let's see, we have 8 and 9, which is kind of public outreach. And we have that as a future work session. No work's been done on that, but we can keep it on for future work session. 10, Irma Tinger House continues to be ongoing. I think we'll just keep that on. The 7, the policy discussions. One thing I wanted to let you know, Metro actually was able to spend some money to do some research on the Kenema Cemetery Road. And so we're going to be getting a document from them in the next month or 2. And actually, might even get a presentation from it. So at one of our winter work sessions. But they were able to spend some money from their open space program and to better analyze, because they basically, are on both sides of it. And even though it's not on their property, they felt that it was a public responsibility to understand this road that bisects their open space. And so they spent some money and hired Melissa Darby, who's a preservation archaeologist, to do some research. And she is putting together a report on background information of what she knows of the Kenema Cemetery Road. So that's great. I'm excited. So that no longer has to be on our future projects list. That's all I have. Is there anything else that you want to give a higher priority to, or add, or remove?
Well, it sounds like we could remove number 7.
I think we've mostly
Yeah.
resolved that.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
No, I'm good with it. As is.
Vicki?
No.
Okay. Well, that looks like it concludes this meeting.
I've added communications to our work session agenda because what I would like to do, and this is being added to all the boards and commissions work sessions, because what we'd like to do is we'd like board members to share anything, really. I mean, just share anything historic related. Is there a future event that you want to present? Do you want to let people know about? Is there a something you went to that you found is very interesting? And this is your chance to kind of bring in your side and present both to the group and then to the public at large preservation-oriented issues and communication you'd like to pass on. So one thing, I oftentimes will send out emails for Architectural Heritage Center presentations I think are of interest to Oregon City residents, and I can do that, as we move forward for communication. But something I can pass on as staff, something you can pass on. So I wanted to kind of put that bug in your ear of I'd like to use communication to further the kind of education aspect. You don't have to have anything tonight.
I don't.
But one thing I did send out, and I don't have it here, Bill Hawkins is doing a presentation on federal era and territorial era buildings, the Architectural Heritage Center. You go to visit ahc.org, and I believe it's in mid-October, and he's actually talking about the Ermitinger House because he has done so much research this spring, and it's going to be a highlight, talking about territorial age federal homes, which is his passion. So I thought that was interesting, so I wanted to forward that on.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing a new agenda now that's going to be one big agenda. So it'll start with the work session at 6, and I apologize that the agenda says 7, even though we changed the program to say 6, that defaulted back to 7 somehow. So we'll work on that. And the idea is if there's no hearings, we just won't have hearings. But
You mean at 7?
yeah, at 7. So we'll just go through the work session and end with dinner, and then we'll convene in the meeting and have dinner. If there is a hearing, we'll do what we're doing tonight, which is we'll do the work session, we'll pause the meeting, eat dinner, and then we'll start the agenda and the hearings at a time certain of 7 o'clock. So it'll just be one. You won't have these 2 agendas anymore. You'll just have one.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Sounds good.
So that's the goal with this new program. And because we notice land use hearings for 7 o'clock, that's why we have the time certain of 7 o'clock. We can't start land use hearings before 7.
Okay. Future agenda items?
I don't have any, but this is once again is communication. This is a time for
Okay.
you as board members if you want to bring up future agenda items at future work sessions, and then I can schedule that in.
Anybody have a future agenda item? No.
Okay. All right. So we can pause the meeting for
All right, let's
dinner.
break for dinner.
All right, and I will.
Projects that dealt with historic facilities. This is a very interesting project, the one that we're working on here, because we're using an existing building foundation. Now, the Olson Pharmacy building was there since 1950. It's really a nondescript building as far as history goes. Has nothing to do with really any historical significance. But I had a problem with plumbing there, and it annihilated the building, so basically the shell of the building has been there for the last couple of years. We took that shell of the building and we're building the mixed-use apartments above that. It's office space and apartments above. And we're meeting all of the code requirements as we go along as far as the city goes. Those are dealing with the length of the building and how you break that up, height of the building. There's a requirement on 40-foot height for the building, and we're well below that. So we're meeting all those standards, as well as now we're going into the historical significance of this building complex. You had a question about the lower floor and how it might fit in. We took that lower floor and used that as our basis for the building, and so we have 0 lot lines along 7th Street and along Monroe Street, and the back of the building is along the alley that separates the lot into 2 parts. One of the difficulties, I'll talk about that later. We went to presented this to the Historic Review Board.
The Neighborhood Association.
The Neighborhood Association, yeah, right. And had several comments that came back, some of which was the relationship of our building to the church building. And you asked about what the difference in height was. So I'll explain that. We're about, with the top of our building roof, we're about 8 feet higher than the top of the church house next door. But the church house is on a sloped site, and it's about 5 feet lower than the floor elevation is about 5 feet lower as you get to their entrance to their building. They have a 2-story building, and then it's also raised up about 10 feet above the sidewalk level. So it's basically a 3-story building in structure. And if you take the 5 feet off, which deals with the slope, and if you had those 2 pieces of those 2 buildings that were side by side, there would be about a 3-foot difference between the roof lines of the 2 buildings. Okay. One of the questions that came up at our review meeting was about the relationship of this building to the adjoining building, and about the windows that are there alongside the building that face into what was the Olson Pharmacy building. So the church house has some windows on the first level and some on the second level. Those on the first level are facing directly into the side of the existing building right now. So we're really worried about the building. Those are already existing. That's an existing condition. We're creating a new condition up above that. So the question was, how do we provide some airspace and light space for the building that's so close to ours? To give you an idea of what that is, we're 3 feet away from the property line with the back of the Olson Pharmacy building to the property line, and the church house is 1 foot beyond that. So there's 4 feet of difference between the 2 buildings right now. So how do we make that situation not any worse or make it better? Well, we did that because after our meeting with the Neighborhood Association, we actually pulled back our building further where those windows are, so that we had a greater distance. So now we're back 5 feet, is it? 5 feet back from the building.
Additional 6 feet from where we were, and then 20 feet wide.
Right. So we've
Yeah, I'm sure
increased.
that you can use the pointer of the mouse. That's helpful sometimes.
Okay. We're talking about this area right here. There are some windows on the back side of this, and up above, on the 3rd floor, we separated the roof lines, so we wanted to get more residential character to the buildings. So we pulled that apart, made that an area where all the residents can get together. It's an open space. They can sun themselves, whatever they want up there, or have meetings or parties or whatever they want to do. That's their community space.
Can I ask you,
Yes?
do you know what those buildings looked out on before the Olson building was demolished?
No, I have no idea
How
what
high
that
the
was.
Olson building was?
That's my question, too.
You look down on the roof of the Olson building.
Was the
Yeah.
roof?
The sill of the parapet on the existing Olson building is about 1-on-1. They look right out onto probably mechanical equipment.
I believe it was a bow truss roof as well, so that raised up above the parapet.
So they either saw a wall or they saw the top of the building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's only one unit, too. maybe 2.
But we have pulled that apart, so now we have some breathing room. And before, we were only doing that on the 3rd floor. Now we're doing it on the 3rd and the 2nd floor. So now we have this 20-foot length going 5 feet into our building form, so that's 5 feet plus their extra foot. So we're opening that up. So that's a real plus. As far as the front of the building, or the front being on the 7th Street side, the elements here are that on the church building, they've got bay windows on the first level, a roof line, and then the projections on both sides. Okay, and so we're emulating that basically with our building. The width of the church house is, I think, about 43 feet in width, and we're 50 feet in width, so they're kind of related, fairly
I can
close
see
to that.
Yeah.
And so what we did was take the forms that are there and kind of repeat those over on our building, so they all kind of tied together. And one of the questions came up about the decks that are out there in the front and whether that massing really kind of worked together. So we took another example here and put bay windows out here to match the bay windows that we have on the.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's
Yeah, it
on the
doesn't
church
show on
building.
this drawing.
Sorry,
it shows
and
the
this will
building.
be Exhibit B entered into the record tonight?
Yeah.
The revised front drawings?
That was before when we had this is as a result
Of the talks,
mainly of
yes.
our discussions with
Yes.
the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association.
Yes.
And also.
helps. It really does. Yeah.
And also, we did another thing which we tried out because in the vernacular we have more single windows rather than double windows, and so we did an example of how the building would look with single windows. We don't like that nearly as well. It doesn't seem to feel like a congenial type building, and so we like really the double windows system and would propose that rather than the single. But we're showing you the single to show you what that looked like. So we can deal with the bay window on the front. I don't mind that because 7th Street is pretty busy and more noisy, and so the bay window idea would be good in that regard. And it does fit in more with the church house next door.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so even though it's kind of cribbing on the vernacular design, we're kind of throwing in another Queen Anne element into that, but then that's also allowed in
The design guide.
this design.
There's an option they did that because most of these vernaculars were designed, but really they were the track homes of the day, with really designed with owners.
Yeah, do you mind going back
Yeah,
to
you're
that?
going to have to.
Yeah, really the vernacular.
No, I mean, do you mind going
Yeah,
back
you got to
on
go
that?
back to
And state your name and address for the record.
Tom Loris, architect, 5145 Southwest Tualatin Lane, Lake Oswego, Oregon.
Thank you.
I was just making a comment about the vernacular of the day was really the track home of the day. It was really designed not by professional designers. It was designed by owners and contractors working together. There was a lot of, I don't know if you want to use the term eclectic, but there was borrowing elements from different styles. So there was this comment about this double window. Well, if you walk one block around this, you'll see these double windows on all types of different styles, I guess, in the neighborhood. From directly across the street, I know that streetcar commercial, but it's there. It's also right here in the church building, but this is also a Queen Anne, Queen Anne Victorian, so a little bit different. But we chose the vernacular because 85% of the residential buildings in the neighborhood are that style. Yet we kept the massing similar to the Queen Anne Victorian. I think the pitch on that it's pretty steep. I think it might be 1412.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And we have an 812 pitch on our building. Let's see, the main item that I'd like to address is the one that talks about approval of both the corner entrance and 7th Street. And let me tell you a little about what our process was there. The existing building, which was the Olson Pharmacy building, had all of their entrances on the Monroe Street side. So all of those entrances were located there. And so we followed that. We do not have an entrance on 7th Street for several reasons. One of the main reasons is because of the slope of the site and the fact that we have a zero lot line. If we go into that building anywhere on 7th Street, we're not meeting the floor, the concrete floor that's there. We don't have any room to make adjustments for grade heights at all on 7th Street because of the slope of the lot. So if we put a door in there, we can't put a porch out there or a step up to that because of the slope that's, or because of the floor level that's there.
It would have to occur inside the building.
Yeah,
Right.
what if you
Right.
recess the door?
We could recess it, but at 1 and 12, the amount of gradient between, to level that out and get it up, it would be,
We never make it handicap accessible.
we never get it.
Does it need
Would
to
you
be?
then have to change your address to a Monroe address?
That's later in the process. Don't worry.
Does it
Fire
make
department.
So anyway,
I
that's
do have
it.
I do have a question on that. Does it have to be accessible?
Absolutely.
Does it have to
It's
be
a re-
accessible?
It's a retail space.
Yeah.
Sure, it's a public space.
Well, I suppose if it was for
think
egress.
the issue in regards to this being an existing building and there's not an existing front entrance, and does our site plan design review, will it acknowledge that, or will it see it as a brand new new construction? I think that's a deliberation for another day through site plan design review. So my goal tonight is for the board to kind of bless both options and let the applicant and staff kind of process that through. So if,
So approving both options, but not making it a condition of approval.
correct.
Okay,
It's
I
like the
forgot.
idea, I don't want to have to go back because this was not proposed and the site plan design review is going to require it and the board didn't see it. I just want to kind of have the board pre-bless either option, either a 7th Street or a corner option, to be okay, be compatible historically, which I think at a staff level both would be.
Okay.
Okay, well, let's talk about that corner entrance also. In your code, it says here, the primary entrance for each commercial or retail establishment shall face the street. Okay, we can't do that if we have an entrance on that side street. We'd have to have separate entrances for all. We're planning on at least 3 uses. We have 4,000 square feet of space. More than likely, that would be 3 tenants. So each of those would have an entranceway, and that would be off of Monroe Street. So we use the existing entrances. There are going to be entrances that will be for the other businesses that will be on there. So we have that to deal with. And then there's a section in the code that says corner lots for buildings located on corners of intersections and so forth. And it says in here, the way I read this, the primary entrance of the building shall be located at the corner of the building or within 25 feet of the corner of the building. Additionally, one of the following treatments will be required. And we chose the first one, which is to incorporate prominent architectural elements such as increased building height or massing cupola, trellises, or pitched roofs, which is what we have, at the corner of the building or within 25 feet of the corner of the building. So that's what we use.
Right, and this is site plan design review code. So I think the
Yeah.
goal tonight is, this is a later discussion.
Okay.
I just want the board to kind of pre-approve, no matter if it comes down to, it has to be moved that you know about it, and it was talked about, and you knew both options, and you concurred that either option is historically appropriate, knowing the architecture of the building.
Sure. Yeah. And I think we can step on the next item.
And the other item, I think we had one more item, and that dealt with the balconies that we have on the building. And the balconies that we have on here are very simple metal balconies.
Can you hold up that drawing once more, please? You didn't, Revise the balconies, only that you took them off the front. That's what you did.
We did. We took them off the front and put the bay window in there on the front, but around the rest of the building, we
same.
just have just very simple metal railings.
Do you have a picture of that assembly, or what that looks like?
The metal, no.
No, it's just the rungs are 4 inches apart, and they're just a very simple. No design on the railing. It's just simple metal railing.
Okay. What does the top and bottom cap look like?
It'd be like a 2-inch picket with 2-inch top. It'd be the same all the way around, just real simple.
And are those railings actually on a deck, or are they just ornamental?
Just enough.
We can project the building out 3 feet beyond the property line. Our building is right at the property line, so we're projecting out. We're projecting 3 sections of that building out 1.5 feet, and then the other 1.5 feet is the deck. So it's more ornamental than anything.
Okay.
But you can't go out there and stand if you want to.
You could.
You can open the doors and you can be out there.
So
Smell the air.
is the I imagine they're supported by posts, the railing
The cantilever, they'd be attached
to the wall.
to the wall.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, we need to keep having this conversation.
Yeah.
over
Do you
here.
mind if
Yeah.
we
You
keep
just
this?
like
Yeah.
hold it up.
Let me hold. I'll hold.
All right. Perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, so what we're doing is on the front of the building, we have the bay windows. On the rest of the building, we're just doing the doors and railing in front, and then projecting the building out in these 3 locations. That's a code requirement also, so that if you've got a building that's a long building, you have to divide it up every 30 feet, and that's what we do. We align the entranceways to the building. There are 3 underneath all of those 3 overhangs, and they come out 1.5 feet plus the balcony rail, and then we enter into the building another 5 feet, and that's where the entrance doors are to those 3 tenants that are there, and
Okay.
to the elevator that's there,
All right.
or will be there, we hope.
So those balconies on the 2nd floor for apartments and on the 3rd floor for office space?
No, they're both for apartments. There are office space, a small amount of office space in the middle section of the 2nd floor. They face over to where the church house is. In other words, that area that we opened up is right next to it is the office space.
It's page A102 in the packet. I'm sorry, but I'm really not understanding. Are these railings attached to the building as a face mount? Does it bow out? I would really like you just if it's not designed yet, you can totally say that. But if you know what manufacturer you're using,
No, it isn't designed. We know what we're going to do. We're going to bring this out. It's got a deck on it, and it's got a railing, and it's up at a certain height, and it bolts onto the side of the building.
Yeah, it's just a steel platform with a rail that comes up, probably 42 inches all the way around it, and then here, and along here, it attaches right to the wall. Boom, it's only 18 inches out.
okay.
Doesn't require any vertical support.
Do you mind sitting down if you're doing more explaining? Thank you.
I just want you to see this. You asked about the office space. 2nd floor here.
Yeah.
This is Monroe, and here, this is the church.
Okay, thank you. On my computer screen reviewing that, it was impossible for me to see the details.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Any other questions?
Are you actually going to plant trees on the roof?
There will be planters up there, and we'll have some trees.
Potted trees, probably.
No, okay. Would you have gone with the same design had you not kept the first floor walls?
Probably so. We would try to use as much of the site as we could, and the site requires that your setback can be somewhere between 0 and 5 feet, and the side yards are all zeros all the way around the building, and the only place that we have some extra room is in the back of the building between the church building and the church house and our building, which is the 4 feet.
Would you have set the building in where you break it at the massing facing Monroe Street?
Say that.
the long wall at Monroe Street, where you remove the third floor for the rooftop terrace, which you have inset that face coming down to the ground. Had you not had that existing wall there? Or would you?
We're opening up all those areas already, so wherever we have the projection out, we're also going in. Those are our entranceways. Would we do something different? I don't know.
We'd attempt to maintain a retail edge there, so probably not. Probably not. We'd want to keep it up on, right at the, sidewalk, and articulate each individual entry like we've done, do it the same way. We are pulling those back because we don't want doors to swing into the public right-of-way,
Mm-hmm.
which helps define the entry, too, because there'll be shadows, lines there, and it'll help that read a lot better, I think.
Yeah, and the other benefit of having the doors on this side is that we're even with the grade at that point. So the sidewalk and our elevation inside the building are approximately the same.
Okay. I guess I'm just kind of working through, because in one respect, I understand that there's an existing building there, and you really want to keep that first floor wall. On the other, I see the code, and I hear people complaining about the massing of the building and that face just being one big wall. And if looking at this, if it was a new building, where that office space is, going down to the first floor, I would suggest bringing that in a foot or two. And I understand why you have serious hesitation about that, because you certainly don't want to remove that wall, and that's a big headache. But we're also kind of in a dilemma because we have to look at this as a new building. So I just want to explain my thoughts to you at this point, and that's what prompted the question about, if this building wasn't next to you, what would you do with the roof form? Because the only building in this neighborhood that I can only think of two, one is that white senior center down on Washington Street. I guess it's over that way. And then the other one is the large brick one over, is that also one? Is that Main Street? What street is that on? Center Street.
What building?
The large brick multifamily building.
On High Street?
High Street, thank you. So,
What did they do there? Why'd you bring that up?
because you are building a large multifamily building, comparative to the scale of the neighborhood, and those are the only two that really have similar scale.
Are the same size? Because the building across the street is the one with the false front, is a two-story building, but the parapet makes it a three-story building. It's right across the street. And there's and one block further to the east, there's also a building with a high roof line that's maybe 2.5 stories. So there's one on that block as well.
Yep. Okay. All right. I don't have any further questions. Do you guys?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you. Denise, you're on the top of my pile. Please state your name and address for the record.
Denise McGriff, and I'm here representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. Our address is P.O. Box, see if I can remember it, 1027, Oregon City, Oregon. I also live in Oregon City, but I'm not here on a personal level. Commissioners, I am not really sure how to start this, but I will start with what the Neighborhood Association had articulated to me, and for the record, I was asked to make sure that you all were aware that because of the nature and the size of this particular development, the McLaughlin neighborhood felt that the application should have been heard together, whether it be before you or another body, primarily because the issues are very much intertwined and integrated. And it's really hard with the development of this size to separate everything, which is why our comments to you are talking about both applications. You really can't talk about form of this project and not really address parking or traffic or the other things that come up with regard to a development. So I'm just putting that on the record as requested.
Excuse me, I have a quick question. When you say the neighborhood, are you saying at a steering committee, the steering committee level?
It was at a general and 2 steering committee meetings.
Okay, thank you.
So let me start at the beginning, kind of going back to some of the comments or the questions that the staff had asked you, and I've got all 3 of them down, but I'm not sure what the 4th one was, so she may have to flip back to that. But just in general, and I did see the revision to the plan today, because the one that we reviewed is the one that is over there. So I'll try to make sure I keep those separate.
That rendering up on the wall does have the changes. The proposed.
Yes, and I got that today.
Okay, perfect.
The neighborhood association only reviewed the development proposal that we got in the staff report and what was sent to us as a transmittal. So I may, if I catch myself, forgive me. I need to switch back and forth now that I have the new one. So a couple of things that the staff talked about is the architecture of 7th Street. And because we all live here, I think many of us are up and down that street every day. Probably the only comparable building that I would consider that is mixed use that exists today is probably the Farr Brothers store, which is directly across the street. It's got residential above, commercial on the ground floor, and it does have a corner entry. Its profile, obviously, as you know, is much smaller. Much of its elevation is on the Monroe Street side, on the opposite side of the street. We also have the Ely Brothers store just a couple of blocks up that has the Portland electrical contractors in there, but I don't believe they have any residential in the building at all. It's commercial. And they both have false fronts, so I don't really think of them as being 3-story buildings. I think of them as being 2-story buildings with those fronts. So several of the things that were brought up at the neighborhood association was, I think there's a genuine love and concern about the church house. It has sat there before many other buildings in the neighborhood came into existence, going back to 1890. So it is probably one of the oldest in the block, and I think my friend, the late Barbara Hartley, who grew up in the Pease house just up the street, told me that at one time, of course, there were stores and houses and barns and all of that thing. And we do have some pictures of 7th Street, but I don't think anything that quite goes back to that early. So I think in our comments and talking about the church house, I guess the couple of things is that several of us walked up there and walked up to the wall that the Olson's Pharmacy is there, and walked halfway down that corridor just to look at the distance between the 2 buildings and what might be the impact on that particular elevation with the new building. And so looking up at the 2nd floor windows, I appreciate the fact that Mr. Van Loom has made some changes in response to some of our comments. But, the other thing that kind of gets me about it is that, okay, so you have a party room, an outdoor room, and you're living right there next door. That's a whole nother issue, but there could be, there could be some conflicts that could make that side of the building really difficult to rent if you've got people who are constantly out there and there's your unit and you're looking out at that, they're looking at you. I think that generally the neighborhood association, aside from the comment about the massing, I think appreciated the fact that that Joe was not trying to make it look like the church house. I think that the addition of the bay windows, and there's the steering committee actually looked at this afternoon. We had about an hour, and I didn't hear any comments back about the bay windows. I think it does look better than the balconies. The Monroe Street elevation, mainly the comments that we received back was that has already been articulated by staff. It's a very long line. There are some breaks in it, but that they really felt that the vernacular style of architecture is really the way we wanted to go. I think any more elements that try to pick up the church house, it's going to look like it's the faux church house versus the church house, and I don't think we really want to see that. The real shame is that, again, because we're using an existing portion of the building, to me this is pretty much new construction. 2/3 is new, 1/3 is not. I think it's just new construction. Is that it's a shame that more work can't be put into putting the entrance on 7th. That when I looked at this, because I don't have a floor plan of the ground floor, I thought that was an entrance, and I was thinking, oh, that's really good. That sort of helps that. That was one of the things that was, I think, not good about the existing building, was that you came along 7th Street and there was kind of nothing there. There was no entrance, and you had to come around the side to go into Olson's Pharmacy, and obviously topographic issues and maybe drainage might be a problem, but it would be, if this was the best of all possible worlds and we could have our wishes, I think the entrance should be on 7th. But again, I don't have any more information about geotech or other things that might prevent that. Because we are using an existing wall and foundation for this, I think we're missing out on some things that we might be able to do if we could start from scratch. And I guess all of us thought that when we saw the building in its dilapidated condition that, it was going down finally, and we were going to get something new that we could start from the ground up. I understand about costs and that sort of thing. So that's the question that we would respond to about Queen Anne versus vernacular. I didn't hear any comments regarding the railing. I think they're reasonable. I'm sure people will put plants out there. There may be people who probably will be smoking out there, because I'm pretty sure Peter's going to operate a non-smoking shop, as he indicated. So I'm just looking at the balconies. I think we think that'll be okay. I'm thinking back to has it been James, Christina, has a railing on the top of his building. Then your last question is the additional measures that may be required to further differentiate the front and rear massing. I think that's more of a difficult nut to crack. I think without the articulation of the elevations, I think it starts to look kind of like an assisted living facility that we've all seen, big and boxy. I think I'm going to leave that one to you. I'm not really sure. To me, it doesn't look like offices up there. It looks more residentially oriented, the little balconies. I would, however, ask you to think about, I think the double windows look better. I'm looking down at number 4 on the new A001, and there's just a lot of empty space there that I thought that the other elevation...
Number what?
It's the one on the new sheet is called 4, Monroe elevation. And on the previous one where it's got the double windows, I think is that number 1? I can't...
A0.01, they're both A0.01.
Yeah. So the previous plan with the double pairs of windows, I think looks better than the single. To me, there's something about the rhythm of the openings on the Monroe side with the pairs of double windows, as opposed to the one with the singles on number 4, where you just kind of it just doesn't flow right. I think it's just not. I think it would look better with the double windows as they proposed. Let's see, in your last one, we talked about the corner, so that kind of takes care of that. I guess just some of the other things that were brought up at the neighborhood meeting, and I'm going to look at my comments that I just received this afternoon. So there was a question about the little, as it was called, the little roof. And I think if you look at, let me see if I can get that, on the floor plan, under the proposed third floor plan, there's a on the second floor plan too, there's a little roof there, and it was really hard to see how that little roof was going to be articulated as it's next to the church house. I just really couldn't quite tell. And it may be on number 2 on the new plan. I can see some things that are there, but I don't have it blown up enough to really, for me to tell. It's right in between the 2 buildings where the tree is. Maybe. Oh, don't want that.
The right and left button should get you what you want. Oh, the other one. There you go.
Oh, okay. I think it is right here. I can't really quite tell what that is that's sticking out right there. I'm not sure if that was the roof, a roof. So that is just a question that was brought up. Again, the comments that there's concern about the overall massing of the building and the fact that the walls adjacent to the church house seem to overpower the church house. But I will say this, that the proposed opening really does help. And we appreciate the fact that there's not just a solid block there on number 5 where you can see the 2 buildings together. And I also appreciate that they took the time to show the church house. What would have been great is having some pictures showing, not by them, but maybe staff could have taken pictures of the building, the church house, and then looking across the street, just so you get a little bit more perspective of how this is going to fit. I don't think really the Mountain Tech is really relevant, but that the Farr Brothers store, the church house, are really the buildings that have historic significance that we are kind of trying to look at, and how this building puts itself into the frame and its orientation and relationship to those other 2 buildings. I think as you all know, since you all live here, that many times change is hard, and some neighbors expressed a concern that they didn't want to see this here at all. Others were glad to see that the property was going to be redeveloped, and that Peter had the wherewithal to hire someone who had a better understanding. I will say for the record that staff and the neighborhood association had reviewed a previous plan, and oh my God, that was, well, we don't even want to go there about that. That was not good. It was not good. We told them that we were going to recommend denial because it was so out of scale, inappropriate design, New Orleans architecture, the whole 9 yards. It was just not good. So, I mean, not that I'm comparing these 2, but that was good. So that's really where I think we articulated everything else that there were concerns about. Again, this was based on the previous plan, not the new revision that you saw. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
No.
Okay. No. Thank you very much.
Our comments involve parking, and traffic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Charlie Swan.
And there's a letter that will be entered as Exhibit C, and we can pass it around.
Hi there. I'm Charlie Swan. Live in the Halem, Oregon, P.O. Box 512. About 40-some years ago, I owned an interest in the church house for quite a while, and then I sold my interest. And there's the current owners here today to talk about that. I also own properties about a block away. I'm interested in seeing something happen besides that pile of crap that's there. And I thought what was submitted was actually, I thought, quite nice and cohesive with the area and so forth and so on. And of course, you'd be amazed to find out that I'm one that thinks that the owner of the property, the person that's putting up the money, should have some say in what the dang thing's going to look like. So I'm happy with what's been done there, and I wrote a letter, and I didn't want to read it to you because I've been on plenty of boards, and it's sure boring when somebody writes a letter and then reads it to you, because you can read 20 times as fast as I can talk. So if you want to read it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. Anyway, I think it'll improve the neighborhood. We own indirectly some property over in Selwood and have watched that area go, and it's doing really well. And I've been gone quite a bit lately, but this area over here is looking way better than it has for years. And I'm just really excited about something more happening. So with that, I'll say I'm in favor of it. The church house needs to be allowed to put in a couple of windows on their upper story so there are people up there going to have a better view, and I'd like to very much encourage you to do that. So with that, I'll be quiet. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that last bit about?
Oh, the church house, upper stories, the windows in the apartments would be over there where the building is, and I'd like to see them. I think it'd be better for the apartments if they were closed off, and the windows put in it'd be the north and the south end of the building, so the people that live there would still have a nice, quite unobstructed view, and then they wouldn't be hardly impacted at all by this other building. And I can't imagine that open space without somebody smoking some dope out there once in a while. And if you got a little shield between it, why, it might be nicer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Bob.
Evening. My name is Bob Swan. I live at 408 Northeast 110th Street in Vancouver, Washington. And my wife and I own the church house, and we bought that from Ted Havlicek several years ago. I've been working on maintenance, cleaning the building up. It was in need of it when we first took it over. I too have prepared a letter, which I'll give to you guys.
All right, this will be Exhibit D into the record.
And I had just to pick up where Charlie left off, which is my father. The window thought was, we have windows on, I've only got 2 apartments on the second floor that will be affected by the new building. The ground floor will be looking to have the same view they've always had. The apartment that faces 7th Street has windows out front, and it's a picture window next to the new building. Therefore, we can deal with the sound a little bit, and that one won't be affected much. But out back, it would be nice to add a building, at least looking over our parking lot, we can get a little more light. Just
Yeah,
a thought down the road. This is a whole other issue.
Right, and that can be worked on. We have design
just a
guidelines, and rear is a great place to start.
I think Van Loom has done a wonderful job at designing something to go in that space. I totally understand the grade challenges he has with Church House being lower than the building. Had it been the other way around, you'd still be seeing part of it, even with his 3-story building, which is kind of complicating the issue of blocking the gable end on the uphill side of Church House. When the old Olson's was there before with the mechanical units and the bowed roof, you still were able to see part of the top of Church House, but we're really, I don't know if this is really going to hurt historically, being able to see that side of the building much. Church House has always been for. So in my opinion, I really don't think that this will affect, that view much. I think it's a great idea. That Oregon City has done a fantastic job on the 7th Street corridor. I'm excited about it. I feel fortunate to have bought a building in Oregon City just ahead of what you guys have done there. It's a great deal, and I think that this building could be a great shot in the arm for the community, even further yet, just to bolster what you've already done. So we believe that it would be a great addition. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for you, if I may. I like the community deck in that it sets back and it doesn't impose upon the apartments on the second floor. Are you troubled by use of that deck and in people using that deck and disturbing the tenants who live right across from it, or do you think it's all right?
Well, that's more we talked about it. I like the open space up there. Number one, it's hard to be 10 feet away from the building smoking on a balcony that's a foot wide, and 10 feet away from people smoking when they've got the open space on their roof, and my building is 4 feet from their building. I have that challenge with my building as is. Sometimes if it's raining out, they would choose to stand underneath the balcony and smoke, which affects my tenant upstairs, which, it's hard to get away from it. Mm-hmm. The noise level, it's going to be a challenge because Church House is not a real, it's balloon framed, very low insulation.
Because I'm concerned about what you think about that, because even though I like the solution architecturally, I am concerned about people living that close to a deck, and your input is important in that regard.
I see as that could be an issue, and it could. I don't know. I think that's something we're going to have to wait and see how much it's used. I do know the two apartments upstairs on that side are the ones that I have the hardest time renting. And when I say hardest time, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 weeks to rent them. Mm-hmm. I usually have a waiting list. I had thought, from a personal standpoint, monetarily, they're going to be putting 1-bedrooms in. I've got 2 1-bedrooms. I was wondering what kind of competition I'm going to have there. But we are really entry level. We've kept our rents pretty reasonable. We're like, $500 a month. I'm sure that new is going to be a whole different renter. I can't affect that anyway. That's free market, the way it works. So I am a little worried about the noise, but like I say, the building's a little on the noisy side anyway. 7th Street's pretty busy, pretty noisy. I'm hoping that doesn't affect those. If it does, we'll have to figure out some way to soundproof those units down the road, I guess.
Thank you.
They have the deck on the other side. Just a question for you. If that was a unit, would that bother you? The deck on the...
I like the idea that it's open.
Okay.
I think that's really going to let a lot of light into that. That one unit I have up there is a studio. It's a small studio, and it's kind of pretty tight anyway, unless we can light the back. So I guess I could go either way. If it was a unit, the chance of noise would be diminished. A lot less, people out there talking or partying, or if they have something, you never know who's going to be renting the apartment, whether they're going to have a day job or a night job, or
Sure.
So I guess it could be dealt with one of two ways. Either we can soundproof the inside of Church House that doesn't affect the historic value, or if it was a unit, then it wouldn't be a non-issue.
Okay.
If it's a unit and we had a window out the back, then that apartment would work fine.
Yeah, I ask you that question because the applicants are going to step back up, and then I'll pose the question to them. And I don't know if that roof deck was proposed as remediation for any potential conflicts or issues, or if that was where in the design that came in. So I appreciate your feedback. That's helpful.
All right.
And just
I
to,
could stick my nose in a second.
Oh.
Denise had a great idea while
you got to come up and,
she said...
Oh, I'm sorry, Charlie. Do you mind coming back up and sitting down?
Yeah, sure, I can do that.
Thank you. Just maybe 2 minutes.
Less than that.
Excellent.
Denise's great idea was, why not put a limit on the hours? And they can't be out there after 10 o'clock having a party.
I believe that's a part
Problem
of it.
solved.
Okay. Noise
Thank
ordinance, not our
That's-
purview.
Code anyway.
that's kind of the question of, do you solve this as a design solution or an implementation solution?
Yeah.
And just as a quick plug, our preservation grant program does pay for interior storm windows.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We'll invite the applicants back up. So my new question for you guys is, was the owner pushing for as many units as possible? And
Say that?
was the owner pushing for as many units as possible? And
No.
at any point in time, was there hoping to put a unit in that space?
We originally when we first did the planning on this, we had units on both floors all the way to the top.
Okay.
And we thought, It's pretty clever what we did with the roof, break it into two parts so it got down to residential scale. I thought that was a good move. And the code requires that you can't have a roof longer than 75 feet anyway. So that was just a fortunate break for us.
Oh, okay.
And we divided the building, and so it has residential scale on the Monroe side and also on the 7th Street side. That area that we have upstairs is part of the required not necessarily open space, community space that is required for this building. So we had to put it somewhere. This is a great location because it's up there where people can sun and so forth. So we have no idea what it'll end up being, but it's the social space that's available for them.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I'm just trying to help you guys out wherever I can. And
No, it helped break the building up tremendously.
Yeah.
think it did.
One of the important things about buildings is that if you can break up the roof line of the building, it really makes the biggest difference of all, and that's what we did. It worked out real well, so I think it's a very successful solution to that problem. And one of the questions that came up was about the massing and the relationship of this building to other buildings in the area. I think you're going to see a lot more 3-story buildings along that 7th Street corridor. It's not going to be just this one. It's going to be a lot of buildings because you want to get close to transportation where people can bike and ride and drive and so forth. You're going to see a lot more of that mixed-use kind of buildings along that corridor.
I agree. I think the revised drawings address.
Yeah, if we can close the public hearing part and go
Okay.
into deliberations, or if you have questions back to
No,
the
I don't.
applicant, you can
Sorry.
continue to do that.
One last point. We like the double windows better than the single windows.
Yeah, I know
think
you
it just
stated
looks
that
better.
before. Yeah.
okay. Thank you very much.
And they're more expensive, too, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we will close the public hearing and open this up for discussion. So, Vicki?
I can start? Okay. Well, I'm really happy that the owners of the church house like the design, and that was one of my main concerns, is the impact on the church house. So that takes away a lot of questions that I had about it. I'm really happy to see 3 stories on the 7th Street corridor, even though it's not that common. As Mr. Van Loom said, it's going to get more and more common, and if we want economic vitality on 7th Street and we want a good walking neighborhood, it's really important to have that density there. My one negative, which is probably, again, is parking, and parking, as Denise said, and I guess it's not technically within the parameters of what we do, but for the record, I'd like to say that I think that the applicant's information or reporting of what happened at the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association with regard to parking is pretty incomplete, and I don't think it's accurate. I think there was a lot more concern about parking than is expressed in your application. And I'm a lawyer, so I like to, maybe I'm pushing the envelope here, but when I look at the design criteria, the criteria that we look at here, I would argue that talking a little bit about parking is applicable here, because if you look at criterion number 3 and 4, we have to look at the economic effect of the new proposed structure on the historic value of the district or historic site, and also under 4, the effect of the proposed new structure on the historic value of the district or historic site. And I would argue that the lack of parking has an effect and an economic effect on the value of the district or historic site, mostly on the value of the district. But we'll leave that. I'll end it there, and we can leave that for another day. So that's really my main concern.
As far as the number one on the
let me go
list
back
of
to-
4 that we were talking about, I believe that the new elements that you've incorporated in your latest rendering address the Queen Anne relationship with the church house. And I believe that when you look at that new sketch and you see them side by side, the fronts, and I like the fact that you rendered the church house because it helps to see their windows and it helps to look at the other windows too. I think that the massing, especially on 7th Street, has been addressed, and I think it's very compatible. Also, the architectural measures for the rest of the the railing, I wasn't ever concerned that much about the railing. I thought that was fine. But the additional measures that you took on the front, I think it gave the whole overall design more balance. And I think it is fine with the church house. I'm not so concerned about addressing the corner of 7th Street entrance now because of the site. That's more probably going to go to a different commission.
Right,
for
just
that.
kind of pre-approving both.
But I would like to say something about the parking. Now, there's 15 units, is that right? 15 apartments? There's 18 spaces. That's 1 space for every unit, and 3 spaces for people that want to run in and run out of retail. Plus, there's street parking for retail. So I'm not seeing or imagining a big parking problem here.
You're not?
No, because there's very few apartments these days that you rent that you even have 1 parking place. Now, each one of these is going to have 1, and then there's 3 extra for retail. Isn't there 18 spaces?
Correct. It's more of the parking analysis, not assigning parking spaces for any use. It's based on the balance of all the uses.
Yeah. So the parking is
First come,
evaluated-
first serve?
No, it's
You don't get a
evaluated
parking
on-
number when you rent your
Yeah.
unit.
So you can consider it as people essentially park in the evenings and mornings. Businesses use the parking during the afternoon, and you can share parking that way. But for the most part, that is outside of our purview, and we should probably just skip it.
Well, I was just addressing Vicky's comment.
Sure.
And I just think that there's 18 more parking spaces than there were before, because Olson's didn't have a parking lot.
They did. This
Not
is
very big one, though.
same parking lot.
Same parking.
Oh. I don't know. I don't see a problem. That's all.
Okay. Yeah, I don't. I'm really happy that to hear Denise say that the neighborhood association understands that growth will happen, and that is a good thing. I think the scale of the building is appropriate, and 3 stories is perfectly fine. And you guys did a great job of playing off of the church house. The Monroe Street elevation still throws me off a little bit, but no one else has any issues with it, so I'm not going to make it an issue. It's great to hear that the adjacent owner came and spoke on your behalf too. That's fantastic. I think to some extent the devil's in the details, and the railings do have me a little concerned how those connect to those balconies. Are those balconies C-channel facing outward? Are they facing in? Is that tube steel? Kind of, all those things. I just want to make sure that is less, Northwest Industrial and more Oregon City.
Do you feel like there's a specific condition of approval I can fold into the development application that can give you better confidence?
Sure.
Or at least, is there something you don't want, and make sure that's explicitly not? I mean, this is the time where we can add that.
Yeah. I guess, let's see here. Not a C channel. How about that? And if it's tube steel, maybe face mount the posts. If you do have posts coming, I imagine you're going to have posts. Although you could have the pickets come directly down. If that could be face mounted, that would be fantastic. And when it ties back to the building, trying to minimize exposed fasteners. So if you got a piece of steel, wrap it back that's 4 inches tall, fold it to the inside rather than the outside, just so it looks a little bit more like wood, or kind of matching some of those details.
So real quickly, because I'm writing this down as a condition of approval. You said you do or you don't want C-channel?
I don't want
You just
C-channel.
said C-channel
And minimize
railings
exposed fasteners.
or exposed fasteners are not allowed on the...
I'd rather say minimize, because you
Are
have to attach them.
are minimized
Yeah.
on the exterior railings.
Yeah.
And, C-channel or exposed, let's see. Sorry. C-channel or, what was it again for the fasteners?
Minimize exposed fasteners.
C-channel are not allowed, and reduce exposed fasteners on all exterior railings.
Yeah.
Okay, that's condition approval number proposed for 3.
What that is, because I have no idea what you're talking about. See, I don't know what C-channel is.
Oh, it's a way of forming steel. So it quite literally looks like a C in section, and
We need John here to draw it.
You know what? There's plenty of restaurants in Portland we can walk to.
in section, that's what a C channel looks like. Okay. Looking at most Monroe Street elevation, there is one window that has, there are 3 portions where there are entries. I believe they're existing cuts into the existing concrete building. The one with the corridor coming through at the northernmost elevation, or entry. Right here. Yes. I'd like to see that door swing reversed. And what I'm assuming you're doing is trying to get some separation between the corridor and the adjacent tenant space. And if there is room, I'll say it this way, if there's room for your approach and pull, if you can reverse the door swing, push it over, and have glazing to the left of that door, I would love to see that.
So can you give me, I'm trying to relay this as a condition of approval. So the first Monroe Street storefront entrance.
The storefront entrance closest to 7th
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Monroe.
Can I approach, just showing you the point of view? You'd rather see it the opposite way?
Yeah. If you push it all the way over, if there is clearance.
Excuse me, you mean like this?
Yeah.
Why?
Because that,
Door to swing up against a wall, an exit door, I'm just curious.
because right now there's a big piece of wall in the middle, and I think when it actually gets built, you're going to have glass, then an atypical section. It just makes it look more the same. And I looked at the plan to figure out why it wasn't just an interior partition wall butting up against the mullion. And, that being an exit corridor, I totally understand. So it's not a condition that you have to, but I'm asking that you at least look at it. And if you have
Swing.
clearance.
In the opposite direction. Okay. So for condition number 4, so I don't have to read all these at the end.
Okay.
The first Monroe Street elevation near 7th Street to revise the door entrance to open the opposite direction,
If there is a
if feasible.
if feasible.
Okay.
Yeah. And I should have asked this question earlier. I'm not sure why we're only seeing lighting at the south side facing the alley. No other lighting is shown on the other elevations, but I missed my opportunity to say something or ask that question. I will say, though, that the light that they do have, I like quite a bit, and if they're continuing that in other portions of the building, excellent. So it's not really a condition of approval. I'm just saying kudos. So.
All right, so this is what I'm hearing for conditions of approval. To approve with the revisions to the 7th Street elevation, showing the new bay windows as is submitted. But secondly, to continue with the original double window configuration. So you kind of get a hybrid of the two. 3, the C-channel discussion and the reduction of minimized fasteners to be seen on the elevation when you are attaching the railings. And for the, that we just talked about, the First Monroe Street door closest to 7th Street to, if possible, switch to the opposite configuration of swinging.
Yep.
Okay. And then finally also to approve, based on the requirements of site plan design review, how that plays out in regards to existing building and entrance, that you approve either a corner or 7th Street, depending on
What's feasible?
what the site plan design review comes out. And I guess the question is, if site plan design review acknowledges the existing condition, and I can tell you I'm going to push to the legal possibility of trying to get a 7th Street entrance, but if for some reason it calls out that we have to acknowledge the existing condition, is there something in regards to the Historic Review Board wants to make comment on the 7th Street elevation, above and beyond the requirements of site plan and design review, for regards to entrances?
I would encourage staff to look at ANSI 117. The Oregon Code just switched to that, and I don't know off the top of my head if all egress exits need to be accessible. I don't believe that is the case. I believe only half of the entrances need to be, and I believe there's a caveat in Portland's code that is different than Oregon City, so there may be a disconnect there. But yeah, that may play into it as well. So at least that way you walk into the discussion knowing all the ins and outs. But I don't think it's reasonable that they would have to put a ramp on the inside of the building.
Okay.
Or cut out the corner. I think that would make the building look very strange.
Okay, but if it's required, is it okay?
Yes. Unless you guys say no. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve, need the number, HR 1202, is it and SP 12-10?
No, just 1202.
Okay, HR 12-02, with the conditions of approval as stated.
I second.
All right. Ms. Toll.
Aye.
Ms. Yates.
Aye.
Vice Chair Metzen.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So what happens now with this process is the public comment period for the site plan ends soon, I think on the 30th. And then I'll take those comments and then take the conditions here and then work with the applicant on finalizing the staff report. If no one appeals the staff report, that is the final decision. If the staff report is appealed, then it will go to the City Commission on appeal. If someone appeals the historic review decision, that would go separately to the City Commission on appeal. Hopefully they're both sent the same night if they're both appealed. So.
Do we expect an appeal?
That's not my job.
Okay.
So, but thank you very much. And we have a lovely couple that's been waiting a very long time, so I'm ready
Oh,
to.
yes. Thank you very much.
The next one, the
I need
Prospect
you to
Street.
email me the PDF that you just sent to them.
Really like to, if it's possible, we would really like to see any changes to the elevation. If it goes from the corner or to the side, because as Garrett pointed out, that could look kind of inky. So we would really like to take a look at it, and I promise we'll turn it around very quick if we have any comments about it. That if the elevation gets to 7, if it's in the corner elevation.
The problem is, I don't think it's done now. I mean, we can send it to you, but it's,
Well,
yeah.
we'd like to see it. And part of the issue that we have as a neighborhood association is that when stuff gets as an either or, then we never see it again. And we just want to see it.
Sure.
You know, I know Joe, so I mean, if the neighborhood had any strong objections, I just call them up and say, hey, we looked at it, here's an issue that we see. But
Okay.
I doubt that we will, but I'm going to get that. They're going to say, are we going to be able to see that? So I'm just saying that. Also, just so you know, it may be okay for 3 stories right today, but see, it may not be tomorrow. The neighborhood has, we've got the one side that's, and the other side that's just, it's hard to find that middle path.
Good. Well, it was refreshing to hear, at least out of your mouth, that
It's what I tried to
change happens.
It's that we were the instigators of the 7th Street corridor plan. We had to beat the city up to get them to even consider having us do that. And now that it's here, we want to see it implemented because we think it is a good thing.
It'll make the neighborhood so much more viable and lovely. And, yeah.
We don't want to end up with a parking problem like you're having on Division. We have all those developments going in the neighborhood.
In
Portland.
Oh, in Portland.
I
Yeah.
work in Portland. I have to deal with that.
What's funny is it's really not that bad.
Yeah, we're still moving on.
See ya. Thank you.
But
Okay. No, wrong one.
thank you so much for your patience.
My PowerPoint was, hold on one second, PowerPoint was up.
I'm not in the other room trying to entertain a 3-year-old or 3-month-old. Yeah.
You did good.
Yeah.
Someday it's good and he's happy.
Really, we all are. Okay. Okay, I will try to be as succinct as I can. One thing, Vice Chair Metzen does not have to do the front preamble of the land use notice because it was done tonight, but that little small section that introduces us and talks about conflict of interest and if you visit the site.
Okay. Where is that? Oh, do any board members have a conflict of interest ex parte contact regarding this application?
No.
No. And who's visited the site? All of us. Excellent.
All right. As you recall, this is HR 1205. The applicants came through a design advice last month. They have purchased the property and kind of have an aggressive construction schedule. And just as a quick aside, I think this is their first time I've ever had an applicant where I gave them really aggressive timelines and deadlines and gave them everything they needed to turn in and exactly what they needed, and they did it to the T. So very, very happy, and it can be done if you have the wherewithal and the patience to do it. So I thank you very, very much for doing that, and you definitely stepped up to the plate. Just a real background, the Charles Moran House was divided as a 3-lot partition in 2006. It was just an extra large lot, as some of these landmarks are, and the rear of the lot was deemed not particularly significant to the overall significance of the house. A rear garage was demolished. And at that time, a new one-car garage was allowed by the Historic Review Board through a landmark review to access off of May Street. And then some dormers were put on in the second story. Also, what was approved was vinyl windows on the house. And this was related to the time we were in '06. We had only demolition delay. We did not have demolition denial or demolition by neglect code. We had the understanding the market and the location of where that house was, and a worry that the applicant was going to demolish the house. And this was really kind of seen as the grand compromise. So just so you know, there is existing vinyl windows on the Moran house, and that was approved by the Historic Review Board. And so the applicant is proposing vinyl windows, and I think in light of that issue and also knowing the market and the site in the neighborhood, I think that that is a reasonable request. This actually is Google Maps shows what it looked like halfway through the process. So you see actually right here, I think they're pouring the foundation for the new garage, and this is putting the streets in. But this is kind of the condition of what the house was in at the time. This is what it looks like today.
Nice.
And then this is the new dormer they put on. So what it did look like without the dormers and what it does look like today. So this little bit talks about the vinyl window. So there's two properties. 1005 Prospect is the one that abuts the landmark on Prospect Street. 107 is the one on the other side. So one question that I have to the board tonight, and based on your answer, we'll kind of spill into the conditions of approval, is do you see both of them equally related or kind of seem the same as they relate to the Moran House? Do you see 105 having kind of primary review and then maybe some secondary review qualities for the house on the other side? Do you care at all what the 1007 looks like? Is it a more of a massing issue? I guess how much do you see the two buildings having different levels of review? They may not. We
No,
have
I
conditions
think
of approval on that.
I don't.
Or if you do see that one house removed from that has less review, then I have some additional, then those additional conditions that I have on the end may not be applicable. But if you do see them kind of following the same level of review, I have some conditions on kind of the bungalow nature and some of the offset, which I'll put. So right here you have kind of this layout is really not typical for a two-story bungalow. So if this was in the McLaughlin Conservation District, this would not be recommended.
Why does it have to be a bungalow?
Well, it doesn't. It would say I would recommend that this goes more towards vernacular,
That's so
or
true.
at a minimum that you take this second dormer off, or provide an alternate design, which I can kind of get from the board.
You want a response?
No, hold
Oh,
on one
okay.
second. So, I mean, that's one thing is that, but then you could also view that, you know, that we are not in the McLaughlin Conservation District. This is one house over abutting the landmark. There is a plethora of architectural styles and building conditions in Prospect, and at the end of the day, it's masked appropriately, and the architectural details have been varied, and they may not be appropriate in a historic district, but they're fine where they are. So I mean, that may be fine too, and that's kind of that second view. The applicants have proposed to attach the garage, and I think that's fine in this location. It may not, once again, have been approved in the McLaughlin Conservation District because you have kind of the same type of home all around you, and you have a much better cohesion of historic building form, and you just don't have that up there. So I think it's attaching it in the rear, you still keep the single-family house volume, whereas, you know, what we're saying isn't appropriate is a brand-new house design with a front attached garage and maybe a small front porch. I mean, that's what you're seeing in today's new construction is you have your volume, you have your front porch, you have your garage set, and you have a much bigger massing. So they've done a lot here by taking the one-car garage and pushing it back. So I think that is a great solution and a compromise for where it's located. We talked about going from a hip roof to a gable roof, and so they've shown that in their revised design. And this is showing 1005. So here's the back of the historic residence. You have your driveway here, and then you have that nice separation of massing by using the garage on that side. This is the other one, so you're one over. Remember, if you also remember, the door is facing this way, and by our design guidelines for new homes in Oregon City, you're allowed to have your door face the side as long as the front elevation is all architecturally kind of built to face the street. The fact that your door is a side entry is fine as long as the whole front. So it meets our design standards for new homes in Oregon City. So the first, I have these as outstanding issues. So really this first paragraph is kind of the discussion of 107 Prospect. And if you see that differently, if you are fine with it, this condition of approval can be removed. The condition of approval related to just general development is that the applicant is allowed wood, fiberglass, and of course the proposed vinyl windows. So you got to allow, keep the universe as open as possible, even though they're most likely with the vinyl in. I do have an issue with the grids that were proposed on the 1005 elevation. It might just be the drawings program that I always like to put grids in, but I really recommend not for a vernacular design to not have the grids, because they're going to be most likely interior grids, step in the middle, and I'd much rather see clear 1/1 windows. I think they're going to be much more compatible, and the cost of exterior mullions and vinyl windows, I just don't think that's something the applicant wants to do. So to get the windows we'd want to be appropriate for vernacular is most likely not what they're
regular
providing. I
1/1.
would rather just see 1/1s. Especially on the front elevation and maybe even the side elevations that you can see from the street. The rear elevation, you're bound behind by the gas station, may not be as much of an issue. But this front elevation and then this part that you can see from Prospect Street as you're looking down the street, you can see this front part. Let's go back to the conditions of approval. Most probably both porches should be a minimum of 18 inches off the ground. These porches shouldn't be at grade. That's the whole concept of historic massing, is these porches are built above grade. They are that public-private intersection of space, and they need to be slightly elevated off of grade. So 18 inches is the minimum. It can be higher than that. And then wood or minimum 4-inch smooth composite lap siding, most importantly the smooth. The lap siding that has the wood grain usually is not as compatible with the historic flavor, because that wood grain sees through. And most usually when you do smooth, it looks more appropriate in a historic context. So those are the conditions I have. It's really your direction on how you see 100 Prospect, and I'll kind of leave it to you, and the applicants are here if you have any questions for them, or if you have any questions for me before you call them up. You had a question?
No question.
The existing historic house, does it have grids on its windows? Are they trying to match that? Oh, no, I see it doesn't. Okay.
Can I interject something?
Yeah.
For some reason, an old drawing got put in there.
I
We
see.
have no grids.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm
So
pretty sure
non-issue.
that was removed. I just wanted to make sure and
Yeah.
reiterate it in the
Yes.
conditions of approval.
Okay.
All right. So if you don't have any further questions, I can bring the applicant.
Okay, thank you.
I might just stay here.
All right.
Applicants, excuse me.
Thank you. Please
Good
introduce
evening.
yourself and name and address for the record.
Dustin McBeth, address 28659 Southwest Caney Creek Road, Wilsonville.
Okay.
So we, after our first meeting, the consultation meeting, we took back and did all the revisions that we had talked about, adding the hip and etc. some reason, I don't know if you guys have those on your screens or not, the most current.
It should be on here, so you can just move back. Oh. Just you can move the forward and back button. Oh, up there, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so go back. Oh, sorry.
I broke it.
That was the last. So we need to advance one more. This is it. So.
Thank you.
I don't think our current ones, the ones we submitted. Oh, wait, go
Those
back.
are on.
Yeah, go back.
Yeah, the elevations were not updated.
Oh, okay. Well, those are.
Yeah, 107 was, but not 105.
Oh, okay.
So,
But we have.
yeah, we have them updated if you want to see them.
Yeah, we can we'll add them to the record.
The full size.
Well, I'll add it to the record and name, and you can email it to me tomorrow for the record. But you can show.
we see that
You
now,
can show
though?
them.
This is 105, which is the good one.
105.
So this will be Exhibit A, entered into the record, and will be emailed via PDF tomorrow for the file.
Thank you.
Like the garage doors?
One question that I did have for this, and if it opens up a whole can of worms, I don't even want to go down that road. What I was on the way over here thinking about the upstairs, the way we have that drawn in, it's not a full height second story. And I was wondering what your thoughts would be if it would be okay to raise that up to 8-foot ceilings in there and keep the same truss system that we have going on in there with the same overhangs, but just raise it up so that we can get somebody who's 6 foot tall going up the stairwell. I think you can see it in a cross section on those plans, kind of what I'm talking about.
So how tall are the ceilings now? 7?
The way that it's drawn in is they have a vault to them, and it's 6'10", 6'8".
So how does that affect the finish exterior? Like,
It would make
Should
it.
make it taller.
It would just make it taller
by how
by
many?
14 inches.
Yeah, it would make it look less like a story and a half and more
Like a
two-story house.
two-story. I don't have a problem with that.
What is the Moran House?
Oh, it's a full 1.5 story. Here, if you want to go back
Full
to
1.5 story.
Yeah, I mean it's
Full
sorry.
1.5
It's,
story?
here.
Yeah.
There we go. I mean
Oh.
it's
You mean a
it's
full 2-story?
no, it's a 1.5 story. I mean
So essentially, the second floor has short exterior walls on the sides,
Oh, okay.
and then the rafters go up from there. So you, when you're standing inside, you see the vault kind of come up and around, and I would be fine with you going to 8 feet.
Thank you.
Do you guys have? any
I
further-
defer to you. I mean, if it was in the historic district, I wouldn't, but it's not, so I think that's
Yeah.
all right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We like livability.
Doesn't bother me, I'm sure. That, and as you can see on that elevation, the garage detail has changed with the roof and the grids removed.
Oh,
Yes, this looks much better.
yeah.
Yes,
That's-
we agree.
I am not personally as concerned. Well, did you guys have any other comments about things you changed?
That's the only thing that I just thought of as we were walking in. So
Okay.
everything else is pretty much we took your guys' advice and applied it to the plans. And
Okay, perfect. Do you guys have any questions?
No, I think it's going to improve that neighborhood immensely,
Yeah.
which it needs a lot of.
Excellent. Well, I think we can.
Close and deliberate and let me know about
Yeah.
1007 and if you want to remove those conditions of approval.
Well, we have to open it up to public comment first.
Oh yeah, anybody?
Anybody? No? Okay. Rebuttal? Excellent. No rebuttals. So we will close public comment
Yeah.
and open to discussion. I think this is just fine. Yeah, this will really help out the neighborhood a lot. Condition of approval, you must, at 105, have 8-foot ceilings on that second floor.
So I have an 8-foot ceiling added, and then the second set of conditions. I'll have to go back to my staff report to see what the actual number is.
I don't think it's necessary
Okay.
to differentiate between 105 and 7.
Okay.
It's not in the historic district. There's lots
They
of
should
houses
both
around
be
that are
eight.
eclectic,
Yeah.
and it's you look at the side of the historic house. You don't look at the front.
So
I agree.
I have that second lower. I'm going to need to go to
So
the
they
conditions
both
of
can be
approval.
8 foot, right? Both houses?
Excuse me?
Both of them will be?
To the spring point of the roof, they will both be 17 feet.
It would be 17 feet?
Yeah, because you've got an 8-foot floor or ceiling height, then 12 inches for your floor.
So the first floor's
And then-
8 feet?
Yeah. Well, maybe it's 9. I don't
It's
know.
9.
Okay.
Okay. So real briefly, I have the conditions. I think I'm just going to read these because it's a little more complicated than what I did, because I took some of the conditions into the PowerPoint. As revised, I see this condition of approval number 1, final inspection is required prior to certificate of occupancy. 2, inside lumber, pressure treated wood shall not be on any visible surfaces. 3, all railings, deckings, and stairs shall be painted to match the house body or trim, either through paint stain or paint, so no exposed wood. And then the next one was the one that we're removing, the about 1007, so that's being struck. Number 5. Number 6, the applicant shall utilize the following materials that we talked about that's the second paragraph in the PowerPoint. Vinyl windows, no grids, porches 18 inches off the ground, smooth lap siding, and then that last condition of approval is allowing an 8-foot ceiling height on 100 Prospect.
Okay. Question about painting to match. How is it painted to match if it's stained? Or it just needs to be finished,
It
is
needs
what
to
you're
be
saying?
finished, yeah.
Okay. I would like to clarify, we are using cementitious siding. That's right? For the building, are you using cedar or hardy?
We were planning on using like a hardy product.
Perfect. I don't think hardy has a Dutch lap, but I saw somewhere in the staff report that Dutch was preferred, and I don't like to see a Dutch lap in a cementitious because it doesn't look like a Dutch lap.
Okay, so just straight
just-
4-inch lap, smooth,
Yep.
cement board siding.
Minimum 4-inch, I think.
I've never seen, no, I don't know what that is. Is
What
that
is
like
Dutch
shiplap?
Same thing.
Shiplap.
Yeah.
You know what shiplap is, right? That's where they have the little space in between each piece of it.
Where lap is just
Okay.
right over.
Yeah.
I work through drawings. Okay. So then
It'll be
do
less
we...
expensive.
So at this point, we can make a recommendation with the conditions as read by staff,
Yeah.
unless you want to add anything else.
I don't. Any other comments? Someone want to move for approval?
I move. What's the number?
HR 1205.
I move we approve HR 1205 with the conditions stated.
Second.
All right, Ms. Yates?
Aye.
Ms. Stoll?
Aye.
Vice Chair Metzen?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Good job.
Well, we greatly appreciate the reasonability to this too. So thank you, and also thank you for all your time.
And have you turned in yet for building permits?
I'll be doing that this week.
Okay. Just let them know if I'm not there, just to
Will you do that this week?
I may not be in the office, so if I'm not there in the office, just tell them it was approved on Tuesday. I'll turn it in, and
Absolutely.
I can just go in and sign off once the file's all approved. And then you'll just work with me on those conditions of approval, so as we get closer to certificate of occupancy, just contact me, and I'll do a site visit, and I just need to check off all those conditions.
And we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Mr. Vice Chair.
That's right.